You can hear my, you can hear my voice and also see the PPT, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so last class did the case control study. We had two groups over there. One group in which the outcome has already occurred. So if you are studying lung cancer, then a group of people who already have developed lung cancer, and then another group of people who doesn't have any lung cancer. We saw how the selection is made, the sample, and also the comparator group and also the case group, how we select the people, and what is bias, what is confounding factor, and what are the bias possible in a case control study. Mostly the bias that is possible will be the selection bias, and the in the information bias, the recall bias, because the people have to give whatever happened according to their memory, and most of these things had happened years before. So we don't get a temporality, also a sequence between the exposure and the outcome, but what we maximum get is an association, whether the exposure and the outcome has been associated. We don't get that temporal sequence, but still an association. And then, as the end result, when we do the analysis in a case control study, we end with some value which we call as odds ratio. So after that, we are going to the next step, or next type of analytical study, which is called as a cohort study. So the cohort study is known by variety of other names: prospective study, longitudinal study, incidence study, and forward-looking study. Sometimes they may not use in the exam that word cohort. They may be using any of these terms. So just might to confuse you people. So the prospective study, you should remember in case control study, it was retrospective. We were looking backward, because the exposure and the outcome had happened before you started studying. You were starting with the people, a group of people who had already developed the disease, and they already had this exposure. If it is smoking, they started years before. So by the time you start study in case control, you were going back. That's why it was retrospective. And cohort study, it is prospective or forward looking study, because now you are going to select a group of people, and that group of people will be with who will be having some common characteristic, and then we call them as a cohort. That will be a scientific term which is used to denote them. And then you're going to watch what is happening with them. So you're going to look forward, and hence it is called as prospective study or forward looking study. It is also called as a longitudinal study, because you are going to watch from your position, you're going to watch like a sequence. So hence it is called as longitudinal study. Like if we are going to draw on the line, the longitudinal will be from top to down. So that is a indicating you're going through a sequence. Temporality will be there. So to indicate that duration, that term longitudinal study is used. And then it is also called as incidence, because once you do cohort study, you are going to find out the incidence. So when I say that, you should be remembering when we were doing the cross-sectional study, like just go into the population and take a questionnaire, do a quizzing or a questionnaire, and you come up, you get a result of whatever you are studying at that moment existing in the people. For example, you are studying diabetes mellitus, you go and you give the research questionnaire to the people, and you are going to get one of the question will be having, of course, because you are going to study diabetes mellitus, you will be having a question: are you diabetic or not? So then the end result, when you take it, the analysis, you will be having the number of people who are having or who are diabetic now, which is actually a prevalence. There is cases which are old and also new. You don't know whether they have been diagnosed with diabetes this year or this month. You don't know that. You don't know maybe the diabetic patient in a cross-sectional study, did they develop diabetes in 2000s? You don't know that, but you know when the day that you did that study, this much people are having diabetes. So that was prevalence. But when we do cohort study, what you are going to get is a incidence. And why incidence? Incidence, If you remember, by theory, or by definition, incidence is the number of new cases. So when you started the studying like the cohort study, you are going to study the same example I will take, smoking and lung cancer. So when you started the study, these people were smoking, but they have not developed lung cancer. So in the course, when you are following up with them, maybe 2 years later, some of them are going to develop lung cancer. So that is actually a new case. It was not existing when you started studying. So that is a new case that is developing. So what you calculate at the end of a cohort study will be a incidence. You get an incidence or the new cases that occurred after you started studying in case of a cohort study. So that is why cohort study is called as an incidence study. So remember this, in cross-sectional, the end result will be a prevalence. In case of case cohort, the end result will be an odds ratio. And in case of cohort, the end result will be the incidence. And we'll get another value also that we'll see in later PPTs. So what is a cohort? This is once MCQ was asked, what is a cohort? So it is a group of people who are having some common characteristics, whatever we consider to study. For example, your batch is a cohort, the cohort of BHMS students of 2019, no, 2000 September. That is the time when you have, no, not 2000, sorry, 2020 September. That's the time when you join. So your batch is actually a cohort. And when we consider the faculties who are working in homeopathy department, they become a cohort. So cohort will be a group of people who are having some common characteristic, like birth cohort, a group of people who have taken birth in a particular year, in a particular month, in a particular hospital. So they become a birth cohort. It's how you're bringing that common characteristic. It depends upon the researcher, but some common characteristic and a group of people, it is called as that cohort. Likewise, we can have marriage cohort, people who got married in the same year. Then exposure cohort, a group of people who have had the same exposure. And synthetic cohort, as the name indicates, it is a made up cohort. And usually this is used in statistical analysis, especially in a study when you don't have a comparator group, but you want to know what happened, or what would have happened in case if there was a group of comparator. Then what we calculate, or how we calculate is by making a imaginary or a cohort, because there is no comparative group actually over there, but you are doing something and imagining that such a standard group of people is the a comparator group. And because you have made it up, and it is not that you randomly make it up, you have to make it up matching to the people who are in your study, and then according to that you have to match it up, that synthetic cohort. Anyway, it is a statistical method, a bit complicated how you make it up. Still there is a synthetic cohort where you can make a group of people, imaginary, who are actually not a part of a study, like a comparator group, a group who have not received any treatment. So that is synthetic cohort. So cohort means a group of people who are having some common characteristic. Now, type of cohort study, we have prospective cohort study. What I was saying you are going to take a group of people and then you are going to follow up who are going to develop the disease which you want to study. There can be retrospective cohort study, and now this will be confusing you a bit because we already told the retrospective is case control, but in cohort study also one type of retrospective or historical cohort study is the, and then we have a combination. We have a combination of retrospective and prospective. So we'll start with this most simple one. Actually, in your BHMS level, I think just to remember prospective cohort study will be enough as such. Uh, and maybe only later stage you study about the retrospective. For now, you just need to know in prospective study or in cohort study also, there is a separate section or there is a section of retrospective study. I will be explaining you what is that retrospective, but if it is so difficult for you to study it, because the term retrospective is coming over there in case control and you may get confused. So it's up to you. You need to remember only this prospective cohort study. So what happens in cohort study is whenever we use the term cohort study, what we are meaning is prospective cohort study or the forward study. If it is retrospective cohort study, we will be terming it as such, retrospective cohort study. Otherwise, the term cohort study just indicate the forward study. So here, the idea will be like this. You are the researcher and you are starting your study from here, and you select a group of people, and that group of people will be the cohort which you decided. Like if it is the smoker, not smokers, you can't, you are later classifying them into based on the exposure, but you are selecting according to your inclusion criteria. You have decided to study in male population of a particular age group, or maybe from a particular area, whatever criteria you have put. According to that, you are identifying a group of people, and then you are separating that group of people or that cohort of people into two. One will be those people who were exposed to what you are studying. So, same lung cancer and smoking. So, one group of people will be those who have smoked or who are smoking, and they are the exposure group. And other persons, they will become the unexposed one or non smokers. And then you are going to observe them for years and see who all are going to develop cancer among the group of exposed and also among the group of non-exposed. Some people from this non-exposed also may develop lung cancer. So because we know it is not just smoking that results in lung cancer, it is the most important factor, but there can be other factors also which can result in lung cancer. So you're going to do a follow-up and determine how many people from both group have developed lung cancer, or the outcome that you are going to study. So this is a follow-up group, or the or looking forward study, and this is the study design in case of prospective. But in case of retrospective cohort, what happens is, this is a study usually done in case you want to study some occupational diseases. So you want to know whether asbestosis or people working in coal mining industry will they develop lung cancer. So it is a rare exposure actually. In case of smoking and lung cancer, you just need to go into a population, a group of people, and you are going to get smokers and non-smokers easily. But if you want to study some rare exposure, like the people who have worked in mines, asbestos, or such similar glass factories, it is not easy that you just get into the population or some small area and then you get a group of people who were working in asbestos. It is not possible like that. So you need to have, these people who were exposed will be very small in number, and you need to take their record from somewhere else. Like you're going to study whether coal mining is having any connection to lung cancer. So you are going to go towards coal mining, which was functioning since years. And because it is lung cancer, we know that it is going to take some years for development. So maybe you keep a criteria in your study, like you are going to consider people who were working in a coal mining area in the time of 1980s or 1960s, 1960s to 1980s, and then you're going to collect their data. You will go to the coal mining or whichever area, it depends upon what you're studying. So just now I'm saying the example of coal mining. So you're going over there, you're taking their work records, you're finding out the people who were working in that coal mining industry from 1960 to 1980, whatever, whichever gap that you have put, and then you are going to take the address, and then you are calling them up. You can call them up, you can email, you can meet them directly. It's up to you, whatever method you choose to. But then you are going forward and you are seeing how many of them have developed lung cancer and how many have not. So when you started studying, here your position is over here, And this exposure has happened years before. Like you are going to study the retrospective cohort study now in 2023, but the cases that you are taking, they were exposed to this in the year 1960s to 1918. So the exposure had happened before itself. And sometimes people may have already developed these cases. The lung cancer also. They were exposed in 1960, maybe in 2000, they already became lung cancer patients. So even before you started your study, the exposure and outcome had happened. But why still it is called as a cohort study is you are taking the data before. That is why it is retrospective. Still, it is a follow-up study in the sense you are following up them from 1970, 1970, 1980, what happened? Did they develop lung cancer? 1990, did they develop? 2000, did they develop? You are going to collect the data like that. So, though you are looking backward, from 1970, you are looking forward. Everything happened before you started studying. Yes, that's true. But over here, you started with 1970 and you're coming each year, like what happened in one decade, second decade, third decade. So that's why it is coming under a follow up study, a cohort study. But both the exposure and the outcome has happened before you start studying. I don't know whether it will be making you confused with case control study. In case control study, what is that is you have the case over there, you have the control over there, and you're just collecting it from a one-time data. You're just giving them, did they smoke or not, and then take the data. That's a one-time collection. But in cohort study, though you are taking the data of the people from the historical data, like all the medical records, then you are following up, like 1970 to 1980, what happened? 1980 to 1990, what happened? Or another decade. However you determine the time span for your study, you are following up like that. That is the difference between the retrospective cohort and the case control. It is so confusing. Forget about this. Just remember the preliminary, the easier one, the in case of the prospective cohort, where the outcome has not developed, like this one, the outcome has not developed when you started studying. The people have not developed lung cancer when you started your study. So that is a complete prospective. And in case of retrospective, the outcome has happened, at least in some people, when you started studying. And in combination, what you do is it's a combination of retrospective and prospective. You can just imagine what is going to happen. You will take data like this, a group of people, and then you will be having like you took 50 people something who worked in a particular mine from 1980 to 2000, and you see that out of that 50 people, 25 people might have developed lung cancer. Other 25, they're still alive. Probably, we are just assuming that 25 are alive, and you don't know whether they are going to develop lung cancer or not. So then you are going to look forward, like from 2023, you are going to look forward how many among those 25 will develop lung cancer. So this is a combination of retrospective and prospective. So cohort study is usually a prospective study where the outcome has not occurred when you start studying. That is the prospective, that's the first act. Then you can also have a cohort study in which the exposure and the outcome has happened before you start studying. And then the third one possible is there is a combination of retrospective and prospective. Then, the most important part in case of a cohort study will be follow up, how you collect the data of this group of people. Because in case control, it was much easier. You had to select a hospital group of people of a cancer registry or whatever, just give them the questionnaire, say them to fill and give you the next day or within a week, and then you are getting the result. That was okay. But so it was just one time business in case of case control. But over here, you need to follow up every decade or every 5 years, every 2 years. It's up to you. So you need to follow up. So how we are going to collect the data? You can do a email or a mail questionnaire, even by post. But we are not sure how many of people are going to reply. Especially you started your study in 2023. Maybe 3 or 4 years people respond. 10 years later, they may not even bother. So we can do, anyway, we can do a follow up like that. We can make a direct phone call to them. We can go to their houses or call up them to some convenient place and have a personal interview. And this should be routinely done according to the protocol that you have given in your study. Then also can be a periodical medical examination. Then by reviewing records, you could go to the hospital or ask the people when you send the questionnaire to send the in between medical records also without seeing in them. Just send a PDF copy, and then from that medical reports you can understand did they develop or not, or any other disease did they develop. You will understand. Then if the people had passed away, because this is a prospective study, so if they have passed away, go for their death records. So you contact the family. Last year when you did the follow-up, the person was alive. The next year you're calling up, the person is not alive. So to the family, you can ask their death record. From that, you can make the study, like did they develop lung cancer or did they die due to some other reason. So follow-up is the most critical part of the study. So although these all methods are there for follow-up in a cohort study, the best method will be a medical examination with personal interview. That's the best combination. So a questionnaire people may fill for 2 or 3 years, as I already told. After that, they may not bother. But if you're calling for a personal interview, and not just personal interview, if the researcher is offering a periodical medical examination free of cost, then people will be turning up because you are going to do a medical examination and that too free. And also you are going to have a personal meeting with them. The people, whomever in your study, will be more motivated because they are getting some benefit. In a mail questionnaire, they answer or not, they are not getting any benefit for that. But when you do this thing, the personal interview plus the medical examination, then more people will be turning up for the follow-up study. So your study genuinity, the validity will be increasing. So the best method will be, among all these follow-up methods, the combination of personal interview with periodical medical examination that will be motivating more people. So the analysis, you did the cohort study, and with what you are going to get finally, you are going to get incidence rate. I told you how incidence, because you are going, when you started studying, they have not developed that particular disease. And then you are following up and you are getting new cases, which means you are going to get incidence. And here you are going to get something which is called as risk or risk ratio, or what we call as in a short form RR. So in case control, you were going to get towards the end odds ratio or OR, and in cohort study, you are going to get risk ratio or RR. Both the concept are same. As like what we said in OR, if OR is equal to 1, there is no relationship. If OR is less than 1, then it is a protective one. And if OR is more than 1, then there is a relationship or a very strong association is there according to that number. So similar is the interpretation of RR. If RR is equal to 1, there is no risk of developing. If RR is more or positive, there is more risk of developing. And if RR is negative, there is a protective, or there is no risk of developing that particular outcome. And why we use the term risk over here? In case of case control, and this is how I used to remember, in case of case control study, they have already developed the disease. It is not they are having the risk of developing disease, because your cases are those people who have already developed lung cancer. So they are not in the risk. They already developed the cancer. But in case of cohort study, they are in the risk of developing the disease. So that is why one of the reason they don't use the term, or there is a change of the term odds ratio and the relative risk. So anyway, in case of cohort study, what we end with under after the analysis will be incidence and also RR. And this also you shouldn't confuse in MCQs. It can be asked uh, in which study you get the OR and in which study you get the RR. OR in case of case control and RR in case of cohort study. So in case this also to calculate like the OR, we make a 2 into 2 table. This is how we construct the table for the cohort study also. You have the exposure status and then how many of them have developed the diseases and then make the final calculation. We are not going into this mathematical calculations or something. And this will be the formula that is used to calculate the incidence rate. I'm also not going to get into this, but you can just assume because you know the formula of calculating incidence. Incidence will be the number of cases that is developing divided by the population at risk. So when we do that from this earlier one, we will understand this is how it's A by A plus B. That is the incidence among exposed. So incidence among exposed should be the people who developed disease divided by the people who were exposed. So people who developed disease among the exposed will be A, and that divided by people who were exposed, that will be this one, the people who were exposed, A plus B. And that is how they come into this formula. But it doesn't matter that you have to remember these formulas and all. And this will be the formula to calculate relative risk. A by A plus B divided by C by C plus D. However, we won't be going into these calculations much. And what are the advantages or strength of cohort study? As we already told, we told two, we are going to get the incidence, we are going to get the risk ratio, and here we can examine the rare exposures, especially in the retrospective study when we know that group of people who were exposed to that particular exposure is very less. We can examine that, and then we can also, that point is not over here, we can also examine a large number of outcomes. Yeah, you are in your study group, you are trying to find out in a cohort study whether smoking will lead to lung cancer. But when you are following up, you can see in some of the people in later years, they are not developing lung cancer, but some other condition, like maybe stomach cancer or some bladder cancer. You may see such, so it is not one disease that you can study. You can study many diseases, which even is not included in your protocol, because in your cohort, you're just going to say that what are the outcomes the people are going to develop. So you will learn a lot of outcomes that is possible. And then one of the most important thing is you get that cause effect relationship or the temporality, which was not we were getting in case control, we will get here. And how we are getting is we are following up them every year or every 6 months, every 3 months, how much ever duration you are deciding. So in case of case control, you didn't have this year wise follow up. You had to rely on that one time data you get from the patients. And if they don't remember, was it in 1950 or 1960 they used to smoke, and was it in 1980 or 1990 they developed cancer, and what stage the cancer they developed or not, you are not getting any temporality or that time sequence over there. But in cohort study, you're very sure when you started study, the prospective cohort study, you're very sure that the disease had not happened when you started your study. So then you're following up, you see, okay, 2 years, no one developed anything. Third year, one person developed cancer. And as the year is increasing, more patients are coming up. And also you get to see as the number of cigarettes are increasing, their chances of having lung cancer is increasing. Or is it is also possible that you have taken a group of smokers, but in course of duration, like after 5 years, some of the smokers, they decide that they want to quit smoking, or they reduce smoking. And then you also see that the lung cancer, the incidence in that lung cancer in those people is reducing. So you understand that temporality. You're witnessing it with your eyes and you're establishing it with the medical records, the medical examination. So this cohort study is one of the observational study which give you that temporality sequence. And that is why in the hierarchy of evidence, it is kept higher to that of case control because we get this temporality over here. And in cohort study, we can minimize selection and information bias. Selection bias because we are not selecting it from a hospital, we are picking just from a population, so that the selection bias will be minimized. See, the term is just minimizing, it is not saying that it is eliminating. So some selection bias will be still there, but as much won't be there as it would be in case control study. And information bias we saw it is the most important bias in case of case control study where we have to rely on whatever the people say. So there was a higher chance of recall bias. But that recall bias that won't be here in cohort study because they don't have to remember anything. The people you are following up and the information they give you, you can confirm it and rely it. The information bias or the recall bias will not be present over here. But then what are the weaknesses? Weakness is you require very large sample. And of course, you can understand why it is needed because you start with 100 people and the study is going for 10 years. We don't know after 10 years how many people are going to turn up. Some people may die, some people may migrate. Some people will just say that we don't want to be a part of this study again. You can't force them, they have to be let go. So, because of this wide attrition that is possible in cohort study, you need to take up a large sample. You just can't do some 30 cases, nothing. You may have to take at least 1,000. You have to do that in the statistical calculation to get this much power for your study, how much sample should be there. That are all by statistical things. So anyway, in cohort study, you need to have a very large sample because a lot of people uh, are not going to continue with this study until the end. This is going to take a long time. It is expensive. There will be ethical issues. Uh, and then there can be migration, loss to follow up, people don't respond, and unexpected environmental changes may influence the association, like some unexpected things, like even COVID-19, when people had to shut up in their house. So anything unexpected can affect the studies, or even you were studying in a particular area and some natural calamity occurred in that area. And and a lot of people might have passed away in that particular area, and then you are not able to do the follow up. So all these risks can happen because it is a long term study. So these are the weakness, but still cohort study is placed higher because we get that temporality. When we say that smoking is the reason for lung cancer, we can establish that via the cohort study. In case of case control, we can only say lung cancer and smoking is associated. But we don't know is there any other factor in between, or how much years it will be taking. We don't know that sequencing, but we get that sequencing in case of cohort study. So once again to the review of our classification. So from the epidemiology methods, we have done all the observational methods. One second. So after doing the observational study, once again, I take this time to remind you, we are not doing anything. We are just observing. In case control also, we took a group of people who had lung cancer, and then we are asking questions. In case of cohort, we are taking a group of people whom and classify them into smokers or non-smokers, so people who got exposed and non-exposed, and then we are going to see who are developing lung cancer or not. We are not giving any type of intervention in observational study. Even we are not in course of study, in cohort study, you understand that smoking is related to lung cancer. There is a high chance. Still, you are not allowed to say to the people in your study that quit smoking, otherwise you are going to develop lung cancer. You can't do that. It is against the methodology, but then it is against the ethics also. Because when you know that a particular behavior of the patient, of the person, is going to end up with a with a outcome, very serious outcome, still you are not able to say to the person, okay, don't do this, you are going to end up. So some ethical issues will be coming. Anyway, you are not manipulating the exposure. You are not asking the smoker to quit smoking. You are not asking the smoker to continue smoking. You are not asking the smoker to increase his frequency or the number of smoking. You are not doing anything. You are just observing what the person is doing. If he is quitting smoking, fine. If he is not quitting, fine. You are not interfering. You are not manipulating. But in experimental studies, so all these what we studied over here, we are just observing and we are just writing down what is happening. But when we go to the second classification, the experimental study, you are going to experiment on it. You are going to manipulate the exposure. If it is smoking people, then you are either going to make or increase the dosage of smoking, or you are going to decrease the smoking rate. So you are going to manipulate that exposure, and that is why it is called as an experimental study. So having finished all this section, we now go to the experimental study, and we have two types: the randomized controlled study and non-randomized uncontrolled study. Though we won't be dealing with this non-randomized uncontrolled study, we'll be just dealing with the simpler ones. That is the randomized controlled study, or what we call as RCT, the gold standard method. And under RCT, there are two types. There is a concurrent or parallel study design, and then we have a crossover type. So the next slides, we are going to deal with what is RCT, what is the parallel study design, and what is concurrent study design. So experimental study, which is the RCT, it is a gold standard. And this is for evaluating the effectiveness of intervention, treatment, or preventive measures. So usually, in case, though I told you we can about the smoking as an example, but mostly RCT is used to know the effectiveness of a treatment method. Like the pharmacy pharmacy pharmaceuticals, or that pharmaceutical company, they introduced a new medicine or a new vaccine, and they want to know whether it is effective or not. So that type of they will be selecting a group of people, and in them they will be giving that particular treatment or vaccination, and they will be having a comparator group in which they have not given that treatment, and then they are going to make a comparison study to know the effectiveness. So here they are going to manipulate. They will manipulate the dosage or the people, whatever they can manipulate that exposure level, and then they get to study the effectiveness of that. So they can do treatment like is as I told, the medicine, or it can be even surgeries. Surgeries can also be done. Minor surgeries, how it affects. Then preventive measures is usually vaccine, and it even can include health education. You take a group of people, and then you are not interfering with their treatment mode, but you are just giving a health education, and then after some time you are going to see what is the change that is happening. So the a lot of people who do PhD studies, they do this type of intervention. Like they don't do any medicine experiments, how medicine is acting or not, but just the health education. Like for example, diabetic patients or CKD patients. I have been in such a project. I worked for that for 1.5 years. And in that project, it was like that. We need to have a group of people. It was a community trial actually. In a community, we were doing that study. So in a group of people, we were giving them classes for 12 months on behavioral changes, especially in case of diabetes. So every month, one class we have to conduct for this group of people, and we need to analyze what is the change that is happening, especially with regard to their body weight, and are they doing exercises, uh, whether is it improving every month, the frequency of doing exercises, and did they cut down smoking, alcohol, everything. But here what we are doing, we were not giving any medicines. Even if they were taking medicines, we were not saying them to increase or decrease. What we did was a mere intervention of health education, so to see what happens after to that. So that also will come under randomized control trial or even a community trial. When we say randomized control trial, we need to do certain things. Actually, the three things: trial, it means it is an experiment that we are going to do, and randomized, which means we are going to do the process of randomization. That is, we are going to group the people very randomly, or in other words, there is equal chances for the people that we have selected to belong to one or the either group, very equally without any partiality. So, for example, in your group, before I go to any other study, in your group, we selected five of you and decided to make you people do some research project together. And from your background, I know Lenny is having a, master in food science something. So probably should be having a better knowledge on this research methodology than others. So if we are going to select Lenny for this purpose, because we know that she has such a background, the study will be ending with a bias, because not all of you will be having as knowledge as her, because she is having a background and not you. If I again assume from my perspective, Allison may not be having a research background. So if she is doing that, again, we decided that Allison do that. The study will going to be having a bias, because that is going to be done by someone who doesn't have much knowledge. And then if we decide that someone, maybe like nine, who may be having or he may be not having, like a middle of both Lenny and Allison to do this, then also we don't know what the end result of that study will be. There is a bias. So we when we were selecting you people, how you have to do it, or who have to do it, there is a bias coming up. So what we do is we just select the people according to a random method, in the sense we put all your names in a bottle, and we just select randomly. So the random person is equally, it's 1 by 5 for all of you. 1 by 5 chances are there that Lenny to come up, 1 by 5 chances are there to Naim to come up, 1 by 5 chances for Yitling to come up, and likewise for Alison and also for Vinod. We don't know who is going to come up. And then whatever the result is coming up, that will be that valid or a genuine result, because it is not biased. It is not biased considering the previous history or knowledge of one person, or non-background of any other person. So this type of randomization we will be doing in case of a a trial study. We select a group of people and we group them into two. We are going to make them a group of people who are going to get the treatment, and we are going to put another group of people who are not going to get the treatment. And which group you will follow, the people whom we are going to study, which group they will fall, they don't know. There is equal chances that you fall into the intervention group. There are equal chances for you to come into a placebo group. It is randomly assigned, no preference is given. And because of that method, there is very increased chances that, considering all other, this one to be highly valid test. So this is the importance of random. The participants are randomly assigned to different group, either intervention group or the control group. So the effects of intervention can be compared to those of control group. This randomization process help in reducing two things. One is confounding factors. So when you do that randomization where every person is having equal chances to belong to either of the group, in a way you are reducing confounding factors or confounders. And second thing that you reduce is bias. So this is a MCQ question. Like the process of randomization can reduce confounding and also bias. And this process of randomization also will give us more conclusive uh, result about cause and effect relationship, because though we establish that cause effect relationship in cohort study, we are not manipulating any exposure factor, we are not increasing the number of cigarettes or decreasing its number and then do. But here we can do that. Here, because it is experimental, the researcher has the right to manipulate the exposure, increase or decrease, and then we will understand, okay, if it is increasing, the effect is increasing, and if we are decreasing the cause, the effect is also decreasing. So we see that change in case of randomized control trial. So once again, the term randomized, when we do randomization, we are eliminating bias, not eliminating, we'll reduce bias. Still there will be some bias in RCT. Then we balance all confounders, known or unknown. The whatever be that third factor, we can reduce it. Then we call it as a trial because it is experimental, and effects unknown to the investigator. Person doesn't know what is going to happen, whether this medicine is going to work or not. The experimenter or the researcher doesn't know. Then controlled, because it is happening in a controlled environment. Uh, Controlled environment, especially if now when I say you this medicine related thing, of course I'm saying it in an open community, but even the experiments that are taking place in a lab, for example, you are trying the animal trial, and then it is being conducted in a lab, and there will be a particular temperature and lightings and all, in which that lab experimented animal will be allowed to grow. So the external environment in which that animal you are studying, that will be in a controlled environment. Of course, not in case of human being when you are doing some study, but more or less you can do or study in human beings like that also. Like you're studying a group of patients, and you have put them in a isolated ward, and you are not allowing them to go out or have any other people from outside to meet them. So they are also in a type of controlled environment. So that control environment is possible in case of RCT. Then here we will be having a comparator group, so that also comes under this control. And both groups, the control group or the comparator group and the intervention group in whom we are going to experiment or we are doing that intervention, they will be identical except for the intervention or exposure, whether they have getting the medicine or not, only that would be the difference. Everything else they will be in match. So these three factors comes together, that is the RCT, randomized control trial. So this will be the design of a randomized control trial. You take a group of people. If it is a community trial you are taking, it won't be patients. It will be just community where there are healthy people also. But in case if you are going to try medicine, like you want to try a group of people who are having gastric ulcer, and then see the effectiveness of a particular antacid, then you are going to take a group of patients who are having gastric ulcer. So you can have a group of patients, or if it is a community trial or field trial, you will be having a group of healthy people also. It depends upon what you are studying. Anyway, we are having in RCT a group of patients. We are assuming they are given some medicine, so they should be diseased. And you are dividing them into two groups, treatment group and control group. Treatment group means the group who are going to get the medicine, and the control group, either they are not going to get any medicine, they are the placebo group, or you are going to give a existing medicine. There may be some medicine now existing or now given for gastric ulcer. So you want to know whether the medicine you invented now is better or worse than the existing treatment. So, or you can also know in other way whether your medicine is effective or not. So, if it is effective or not, you may not want to keep a same medication which is followed now. Or if you want to know it is whether your medicine is superior than the existing medicine, then to the control group you give the existing treatment. So it depends what actually you are studying. Anyway, one group is going to get the medicine and another group, they may be getting placebo or they may not be getting anything. But usually some placebo is given. Otherwise, the people will understand that they are not given any treatment. So to make people fool or make people feel like they are a part of study, we need to give at least a placebo. And then, oh, we give them the existing treatment. And then we follow up and see how many of them are getting cured and how many of them are not getting cured, and then compare the results. So over here, we select a suitable population. The same diagram, if we put in a flow chart, it will be like we select a group of population, and from that population, we select a needed sample. We do have sampling methods, which is actually a part of biostat. Various sampling methods are there. And following those methods, we select a sample and then we are going to randomize. Randomization is actually done over here, the random assignment. You don't know among these people selected who is going to be in treatment group, who is coming to be in the control group. It is also possible, when you are doing a study, suppose your family or friends are there in this study group in case, and you believe that the medicine you have introduced or you have invented is better. You can't do a partiality like your family member will come into the treatment group and will receive the treatment, and someone among your known family will be over here. No, the researcher doesn't have any control like that. Your family should be having, or family or friend should be having equal chances to get into the treatment group or the control group. It is not in your hands to decide. No partiality should be coming. Maximum partiality should be avoided to prove that whatever result you got is actually a correct one. So here you randomly decide which people will go to the experimental group and which people will come to the control group. No partiality to be done. And then you manipulate. Manipulate means you can change the dose, increase or decrease, however, and do the follow-up and finally assess, compare the results between two groups. So we saw that in case of randomized control study, there will be two study designs. One is parallel study design and another one was crossover type. So what we discuss now is actually the parallel study design. Like we have a population, we are randomly dividing them into the treatment group and also non-treatment group. Or here we can give the current treatment, what is existing now. And then we are following up to see how many of the people who did the new treatment they improved and how many didn't improve. Likewise, the current treatment, how many improved and how many didn't improve, and then do the statistical analysis. So we have two groups which are going parallelly, and that is why it is called as parallel study design. Then we have the crossover study. In crossover study, what is happening is here also you have two groups. The two groups in RCT, we use another term, arm A, arm B. That's usually in cohort when we use that group term as a cohort. The term that is used in case of RCT will be arm, intervention arm or uh, control arm. That's a term that is used in case of RCTs. So there is a first group, the arm A. They were actually suppose getting medicine, and arm B, they were not getting any medicine. But after a period, you decided to change or interchange. So there is a washout period. Washout period means you are giving them medicine, you were getting the results, you noted it down, and now you want to convert arm A people, the people who were taking medicines, them into the placebo group, and the people who were in the placebo group to put them into intervention group. So there is a crossover that is happening. So here it is not going parallelly. The two groups are not going parallelly as like in the other one where it is not joining. Here, arm A later will go into arm B and arm B will go into arm A. Like a crossing is happening. And at that time, there is a period which is called as washout period. Washout period is a waiting time period to wait for all the effects of medicines to wash off. So you were giving a medicine for the gastric ulcer to the people belonging to arm A. You studied them for 2 months and you understood, you did the analysis, whatever you understood, or maybe you didn't do, you just noted it down. And according to your methodology, you had already decided you will be giving this medicine only for 1 month for the people. And after 1 month, you take a break of maybe 1 week or 10 days. And that is a washout period. So that, and this washout period will work for the allopathic medicines, but not for homeopathic medicines because our medicines are long acting. We can never know what is the exact duration of our medicine action. So this washout period is not possible for us. But in case of allopathic, because everything is in their in macro doses, they will analyze, okay, this much dosage or this much quantity of the medicine will be washed out from the body within this much days. So in those days, which they call as washout period, they won't give them any medicines. So they are completely now sure, like after 1 week, no remains of the tablet they were taking is remaining in their body. And then this arm, people in the arm A will be given placebo or the existing treatment, whatever. And then people in the arm B who were receiving one type of treatment or placebo, they also after 1 month start to get the proper introduced medicine. And then that means one group is becoming their own comparator. There is no outside control group. One group is becoming their own comparator. So such a study is actually called as crossover study. So this is a basic study or the basic study design of RCT. Now the bias possible over here, I have kept four bias. The most important will be the Hawthorne effect. The most important bias in case of RCT will be a Hawthorne effect. Hawthorne effect is something that people will be changing their behavior, especially when they know they are being observed. So you are doing giving some medicine, and the person is believing maybe it is a placebo, but the person is believing they are getting some medicine. So there is a possibility that they change some of their behavior to get a good certificate from the researcher. So Hawthorne effect is a very important bias that can happen in case of this people, the RCT study. And then selection bias confounding, though we told that it will be reduced when compared to the other studies, it is not that it is completely getting eliminated in RCT. Other things are also possible. Then to reduce this bias, the selection bias or confounding or the Hawthorne effect and the observer bias. Observer bias in the sense we know that this particular person is receiving the medicine and another person is not receiving the medicine. So observer will be more interested to know the effect of the medicine he introduced. So he will be more closely observing the person who have taken the medicine and not much to the person who have not taking the medicine or the placebo group. So that is an observer bias which is possible over here. So it will be the observer bias and also the Hawthorne effect, which is more commonly present in RCT. So how to reduce it? The next best method to reduce it is blinding. So the one method to reduce bias and confounding was the randomization that was happening in RCT. And the second method that is happening to reduce this bias is actually the blinding. And blinding, you know what is that? It will be masking. So we have three group of people in a RCT. There will be a group of people who are participating in the study. There may be healthy people or there may be diseased people. There will be a group of researchers, one researcher or a group of researchers, and another group will be the biostatisticians. who are going to do the statistical analysis. So in a single blind study, the people who are going to be blinded will be one group, and that will be the participants. I'm very sure you will be knowing this concept of blinded study from your organon knowledge. Uh, for the, in our drug proving also, we follow this single blind study and double blind study. So in single blind, it is the participants who don't know whether they are receiving the medicines or they are receiving placebo. They don't know. It will be very similar. You're giving red color pill of particular size to the intervention group, then you have to give the same red color pill with same size to the placebo group also. The people shouldn't understand. So the if the participants are blinded whether they are getting medicine or not, it is called as a single blind study. And if the participants and researchers, because there is possibility of observer bias, the researchers shouldn't do any bias from their part. Okay, this group of persons are having the medicine and not the other group. So even to blind the researchers, so two people or two group of people have been blinded, so that becomes a double blind study. And the third will be even the researchers will be blinded. Sometimes it is possible that the data analyst, they do some manipulation in the study for their own benefits, especially for publication, etc., because they want the study to be positive. They want the medicine that they introduced to be very effective. So the researchers may manipulate the value given by the researchers. So to avoid that, even the data analysis will be blinded. They also don't know which is the that connotations that has been given, whether it is medicine or not, they also don't know. If we do that, that is a triple blind study. And the basic idea between to do this blinding is to reduce the bias and ensure the validity of the study findings. So what are the advantages? We get the causality. We are going to prove it that whether the exposure is actually related to the outcome, which means if the exposure is there should be an outcome. And if there is more exposure, there should be more chances of developing the outcome. If there is less exposure, then less chance of developing the outcome. So we get to establish this causality. We can prove it by manipulating. The second one is internal validity, whether whatever the study we have done, is it correct? Is it valid enough? Then controlled environment, because we are doing it in a controlled manner with a comparator group, then whatever we are going to get, it will be a correct one actually. So we get to control that environment so that we reduce the external influences. In a way, we are reducing the confounding factors also. And then the last one is replicability. When you are going to repeat the same study in other people by other researchers, then the same result should be getting. So if what you studied the same result when another researcher do, if it is correct, both are getting the same result, it increases the validity of that study, it increases the confidence in the study. So that replicability should be the a very simple example will be when you're noting the um, BP of a patient. So one person did the BP measurement and so set some value, and another person is going to do, and if there is a wide variation, a third person should know. So but the first person did, and the first person did, he came it around as 120/80. The second person did, he might have get the same result 120/80, or sometimes it may be 118 80 that the person have got. There is no much difference. So there is a replicability that is possible. So it should be whatever result we get in RCT, it should be replicable by other researchers, which increases the genuinity, or rather the validity of that study. But there are some limitations or disadvantages. First one is ethical consideration. Ethical consideration is, as we told already, even though we know, suppose we are giving some medicine and we know that this medicine is going to, like the gastric ulcer, we are giving some medicine for gastric ulcer and the gastric ulcer will be improved, but then you are getting to know that this person maybe in future develop some other pathology as an after effect of this medicine being taken. Maybe 10-20 years later this patient is going to develop some type of cancer. You know that, still for the sake of study you don't say it to the patient and you just continue. So that ethical considerations won't be done in RCT. That is a limitation. Then another one will be the opposite situation. Uh, because you are studying in a group of people like a cancer, and you have introduced some new medication, but among the cancer patients, some are going to get the treatment and some are not going to get the treatment. You get the result that in those people who you're studying this new medicine, it is going to act, uh, or it is being acting, and then you are denying that treatment for the other group of cancer patients, which is very unethical. So these ethical issues will be affecting the RCT. Then the practicality and cost. Obviously, this is going to be very cost, very expensive, resource intensive, requiring time, funding, coordination, etc. Then generalizability. While we do RCT, it gives strong validity, internal validity. But in case of RCT, the population that we include, or the finally the sample that we include in the study, we will be going it under strict criteria. So the study, what you did, the report that you did may be correct, but because the population was selected under very strict criteria, you may not be able to apply that result to the external population, to the population outside. So it can be that in RCT, internal validity is more. What you did, that result in that population or in that sample is correct. Internal validity is the, but because the people you included in the study was strictly selected, and in case of general population, there is wide variation of population. So the result what you got may not be having a generalizability to the population outside. So it may have an internal validity, but not an external validity, or a generalization is not possible. So we have some advantages. Also, we have some limitations of RCT. Thereby, we end actually all the research studies. Now it's actually a question answer period, I think. So the first study, research question, I want you, each one of you to answer. Is there an association? One second. I'm sorry. So the first question will be, is there an association between exposure to air pollution and the prevalence of respiratory disease in a specific urban area? So this is the research question. I want one of you to answer what will be the study you are going to do over here. Anyone can answer. I mean, 4 or 5 I have kept. Each person you have to answer what type of study design you are going to do. So whomever answer can answer the first study design, which if this is the research question. To find out an association between exposure and the prevalence, what study design you are going to do. You can go for, I mean, your options are ecological, cross-sectional, case control, cohort, RCT, whichever.
Dr. Mira, can you hear me?
Yes. Is it Lenny?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I think for the air pollution, can I propose for cohort study?
Cohort study, but there is a keyword over there, Lenny. See the keyword in that question. The keyword gives you a clue which study you need to do there. Three questions are already there, okay? People, whomever is seeing the slide now, you can see the questions, you can find out the answer. Anyway, I'm not going to move. I'm not going to give you the answer. You are going to give me the answer.
Is it a descriptive study?
Yes, it is descriptive, but which descriptive? Which you think is a keyword in this sentence? Notice each word and see which is a epidemiological word that have been kept in this question. Anyone can help her. It's a question open to all. Tini, did you give up? No one is answering, which means you don't even notice what is happening in the class. And like whatever happens, finally exam we'll see at that moment. Is that what you all are doing over there?
Dr. Mira, are you asking the keyword for case study 1?
Yes. I mean, any question you can answer because your told case study is actually cohort study. Uh, there is one keyword in that sentence which shows it is not a cohort study, and there is another keyword in that sentence which is actually showing which is the study we have to do over there. Because in that question itself, the answer is there.
I think the case study 2, I will propose the experimental study
Yes,
method.
yes, because we are going to test a new medication, so it is
Yeah,
experimental. So RCT we are going to do.
yeah, and it is
Yes.
randomized, and by a group of chance.
Yeah, because
Uh,
it is a testing for new medication, so no doubt. It is testing we are going to manipulate. It is a new medication.
okay,
Uh, so whether that is going to reduce the frequency of migraine. So we are going to study about the effectiveness of some new medicine. So obviously it is RCT. So Kileni, your chance. You have answered one question. So case number one, three, other people. Who's going to answer me research question number one?
the case study 3,
Okay.
is it analytical study?
Analytical, yes. Which analytical? It could be analytical, but which analytical study? Analytical per se, it is case control and cohort, but ecological and cross-sectional can also come over there if there is a comparator group. So which among the four? You see the question, the key word of used over there. I have used a epidemiological term over there in all the sentences, which give you the clue, which is the study. And when you do a research study also, the research question have to be formulated, which gives the clue which study you are going to do. Because when you give a research question, there will be objectives given, and a person who's going to supervise you or who have done the studies, from the keywords, how you have formulated the question, that person should be able to say which study method you have used in your study. That clue we have to give in the research question. And in this question also, there is a keyword. There is a epidemiological term. Epidemiological term means the term which actually comes under epidemiology.
This is it to predict the future one? The
Which case study?
which analytical?
No, which case study you are meaning? One or three?
Number three, number three, three.
Yeah, analytical, I agreed. But which among the analytical?
Which among
Dr. Mira, is it cross-sectional?
And why cross-sectional?
Because it's taking a certain sector of the community.
For everything, we are taking a community. Every study we are taking from community. What you told is correct. Cross-sectional is the answer, but the reason is not correct. Which is the in that statement, the research question in that statement, which is the word with the definition that you learned under epidemiology?
The exposure.
Do you
Where
mean
is
rural?
exposure? Where is
Do you mean
exposure over in case? No, are you saying about case study one, Vinod?
Yeah.
Exposure is a keyword, yes, but that is not giving you any clue towards answer, right? Is it giving you
Okay.
any
Okay.
clue? No, no. Uh, that word is giving you a clue to the study. Okay, I can give you another clue. Case study 1 and case study 3 is having a particular term common in both, and that gives the clue. Now, at least say me what is that term which is common in
Preval-
case study 1 and case study
Prevalence.
3? Yes. So, we are going to study a prevalence, and which study method is used to learn prevalence? Hmm? Hmm? In which study method you get the prevalence?
That analysis.
Cross-sectional analysis, yes. Cross-sectional. It is the cross-sectional when you do, you are going to get the prevalence. So that gives the clue you are going to do a cross-sectional study in research question, I mean case study 1 and case study 3. And in case study 1, Lenny, when you told that it is cohort, uh, the one reason I told you it is not possible cohort because the one keyword was association, and whether the exposure and outcome is associated, we get to know only from a case control study. In cohort study, we are going to get the temporality. So if there was any term indicating the temporality or that sequential establishment, then it would have been a cohort study. But here already association is indicating, which means it should be a case control with that we are intending. But in the second part of that statement, we are saying that which is going to be the prevalence. So prevalence and the association we get from a cross-sectional study, especially prevalence. And from that prevalence, we see whether it is some association uh, that from cross section, and then we can do a higher up study, that the case control, and see whether there is actual association or not. In case of when we do in the first question, the case study one, a cross sectional study, we just get to understand the prevalence. Like you do in China, somewhere it is in China, the air pollution. Question is air pollution, right? So air pollution is highest, world's highest in some city of China, Beijing. I don't know, some city of China. So you are going to China in that particular city, and you're going to take a respiratory disease prevalence, and you see a lot number of people in that city are having some or the other lung diseases. So then you feel that there is some relation or some connection between air pollution and also prevalence. And then you can do a case control study to prove that whether such association exists. So if the word prevalence was not over here, obviously this question would have gone to case control study. But because the word prevalence was used here, and you should know that case control study doesn't give a prevalence, it gives only an odds ratio. And prevalence we get by a cross-sectional study. We go to the answer, the study method, the cross-sectional. So when you do your research methodology, I mean not research, the research project, your research question should be giving a clue towards what type of study you are going to do. So the third one, the keyword is actually the word prevalence. So when you say that you are going to calculate the prevalence, which means there is a cross-sectional part that is involved in your study. So the prevalence of hypertension, it is not the population, as Yetling you told, because every study we are taking a population, and that is around the people, a particular age group, particular sex, it doesn't matter. The keyword will be always these terms. Here it is the prevalence. Now it is case study number 4. I want Naim and Alison to answer this. The research question, is there a relationship between maternal smoking during pregnancy and low birth weight infants? Maternal smoking and low birth weight infants. Naim and Alison, are you people over there?
Yes, yes.
Can you please say?
Yes, just now I answered earlier, but anyway, I'll try again.
Which answer did you give? I thought it is Yitling who answered.
Oh yeah, I chipped in when she answered whether it's cross-sectional for case 3.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Then Naim and Yetling, it will be your chance. And even we know you didn't give me a proper answer. This gives me a clue that in between my class, I should put questions for you people. I usually don't ask questions thinking that I will reserve it for the question, the exam time. But now I understood. No, I need to put it in between also.
Low birth weight infants. The infants are born less of the supposed to be weight. Okay.
And if it is connected to maternal smoking or not, which study will give you that result?
Would it be case control?
Can be case control, yes. So if it is case control, how you will study that?
Is it retrospective?
Obviously, like you can start with low birth weight infants. You can go to a hospital. You can see the record of low birth weight infants, and then you go back and then ask whether the mothers have smoked. Then it will be a case control. Yes, but this question can also be done cohort method. You can take a group of mothers who are smoking, then follow, because this cohort, it doesn't need years of study. Maximum is 9 months or even lesser. So a cohort study can also be done. So you take a cohort of mothers who are smokers and then observe how many of them are developing low birth weight babies. So both studies are possible over here. Both
I
case
thought you mentioned there's some ethical issue. Is it?
ethical issue, but here you are not asking mothers to smoke. You're going to take mothers who already smoke.
But you tell them what is the purpose of your study, do you? Or you don't tell them the purpose? Is it like blind to them, or they know that?
No. They don't know. You just take a group of people. I mean, a group of people means the maternal smokers during pregnancy and just observe them.
So they
You are
won't
not,
know what you're studying.
no. Of course,
No.
that is the ethical problem that we are facing in these studies, even when we know. But then what researchers feel is that at least we are not inducing them to smoke. We are also
And
not stopping them. That's also true. That's the ethical issue. But it is not we induce them to start smoking. They already
okay.
are
And
smokers.
is it considered a double blind, or not?
This blinding always comes only in RCT. The other thing, we are just doing observation. We are not manipulating anything. We are not asking them to quit or not. We are not saying them what is going to happen. Nothing. We are just observing. So if they are smoking, then we are observing, are the children born to them low birth weight or not. We are not going to influence these people in any way. If you even give one direction, see, you have to quit smoking, oh, your baby is going to be low birth weight, it no more remains under observational study. In observational study, you are not allowed to manipulate the exposure in that person in any way. If you are manipulating exposure means you are coming towards experimental study. The other one is completely observational. You don't interfere whatever that is happening. You just notice, you just write it down.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
So in this one, actually both are possible. I think the answer is exactly the cross case control, where you go to the low birth weight infants and inquire whether their mother was smoking. But when I thought about it, we can do the prospective also because this doesn't take much time. Maximum of 9 months only it will take. So we could do a cohort study also over here to establish it. The next case study 5. What is the incidence of type 2 diabetes in a population with a family history of diabetes compared to a population without a family history? Now it should be easy for you. You can very easily find out the keyword.
Population.
Huh?
Population.
Not population. Population is general English word. Yeah, I agree. Name in other words, the statistical term. Yes, population is coming. Yes, I'm sorry, but not population over here. It is another word.
Incident.
Yes. Which study gives you incidence?
Cohort study.
Yeah. So here you are going to study the cohort study because you have to calculate the incidence. You go towards the cohort study. And next one, is there an association between exposure to a specific pesticide and the development of a rare neurological disorder? Which will be the test? You're going to test an association and you're going to see whether a rare disease will be there or not. Association, that's the key term. So what should be the test? Which study gives us the association?
Is control.
Yes. And there is another clue to say whether it is case control or not, because you are going to study a rare disorder. Like the association is usually we are getting from case control, but a cohort can also be. But why we can say here it is no chance of cohort? Because of the term rare disease, a particular rare disorder. Now, what with case control is, we are going to start with group of people, cases who have that disease. So if you want to study a group of people who are having one of the very rare neurological disorder, maybe prion disease. It is very rare, very rare, very rare. You can't just wait. Prion is usually caused due to some altered proteins and intake of certain type of animal, especially the brain part. There may be people who take the brain of animals not properly cooked, and they take it, and maybe in their young age it was taking 20, 30 age they were doing, and may they develop the prion disease in their 50s or 60s. But you can do like that also, the cohort study. But because this is a rare disease, you take a group of people who eat animal brain, for example, in their 20s, and you spend your lifetime, you may be ending with only one or two persons who are having that disease, because we already told it is a rare disease. And what if you spend 20 years in your study to do this? You're a researcher and you spend not PhD, you were doing some research funding project. You spent your lifetime, at least 1 decade, for this study, and you end with only one patient who had a prion, because it is a rare disorder. So there is no meaning in spending years, your time, your money for some rare disorders. In case of rare disorders, better is to take with that cases. So you take a group of people who had prion. Probably they might have died. You will be getting only the medical records, and from the medical records you can either go, or there may be a group of patients. It will be very less in number. It is a rare disease, but you can get a group of people and then ask to them whether they were exposed to this eating of meat or whatever exposure. So when it comes a rare disease and its connection to some exposure, always go for a case control. Because if you go for a cohort, you can do a cohort, but if you go for a cohort, if it is a rare disease, it may not even develop for them. So your time, your energy, your money is everything lost. You don't even get a proper result. Out of the 50 patients, 50 persons who take animal brain, who are eating animal brain, and you watch them, not even one person if develop prion means what? Because the incidence of prion will be, I don't know, maybe 1 in 1 lakh or something. That much rare it is, which means one out of 1 lakh people, only one person is having the chances of developing a prion disease. And your study design, when you took the sample, you are studying only in 50 people. So how many chances are there, like the probability? What would be the probability? It's nothing. It may be even zero or infinity that you don't get a chance. So better always, if you are studying a rare disease, go to the group of people who are already having that disease and then go to the history. So here, and another clue that gives us the association. So the two words association and rare, it gives the clue that the study we have to use here is case control study. And I hope one part of your question is actually research question in your syllabus. I have not given much details about research question, how to formulate, because that exactly comes under research methodology. But I think you will now understand, or you will get some exposure, like how the research question is formulated, because you have to do the literature review and all, and then only you will get. But in that statement, you give a clue to the people, your supervisor or the people who are concerned, your guides, a clue that which study you are going to go.
Just now you said case study 5 has to be cohort. Can't it be cross-sectional?
Cross-sectional, because the word is incidence. You're going to calculate incidence. Cross-sectional, you will
Can't
never
you,
get incidence. You're going to see
can't you
how many.
take from the type 2 diabetes and work backwards?
Wait, what is the incidence of type 2 diabetes in a population with a family history of diabetes compared to a population without a family history? So how you are saying which one to study?
Can't you do cross-sectional? Because if you take cohort, it'll be a really long time, right?
Yes, it will be really long time. But
So can you
cross-sectional,
go Yeah. So can you go for cross-sectional?
But cross-sectional, Lenny, we are not going to get only the prevalence, the new and old cases. You don't get the incidence. When we are doing these all sentences, the words that we use, it show what is our aim, what is our objective. So if your objective is to learn incidence, then the study is obviously case cohort, even though it is much resource taking. But if you want to do a prevalence study or a cross sectional, the term should have been changed. What is the prevalence? If you use that term prevalence, the study plan changes. And one thing is, Lenny, no one is asking you to do a cross-sectional case control cohort or RCT. No one says which study you have to do. When you are doing, it is up to the researcher. It is complete freedom of researcher to do which study, whatever they want regarding their timing, their amount they have. Most of the PhD students, when they go for a cross-sectional because cohort they won't submit their thesis in their lifetime, so they go for a cross sectional study, but then they will formulate the question in such a manner that here the simple thing is they remove the word incidence and they put prevalence. They can't put incidence. Incidence is a new case. That means when you are studying at that time, this person shouldn't be having diabetes. They are going to develop diabetes after you started studying, a new case. And incidence is always a new case. So if you are using the term incidence, there is no way out. You have to do a cohort study or even a RCT. But RCT, we are not doing any. When we see the question, we are not doing any manipulation over there. They are just saying a group or a population who are having family history of diabetes compared to population without a family history of diabetes. So which gives us the clue that we don't have to involve in the study. We are not going to manipulate. It is a group that is predetermined. We are just going to observe. So it is an observational study. An observational study, which observational study? Because they are mentioning about incidence. We need the new cases, not the existing cases, which means it should be a cohort study. If it is cross-sectional, the word had to be changed to prevalence.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So this is the answer. Now the last portion, epidemiological surveillance and epidemic preparedness. So there is something called as surveillance, and what is public health surveillance, the last portion in this epidemiology section. And I already told you the whole PPT, it is around 148, but that is covering the whole your second and third subsections because they have mixed up the topics. Somewhere they have to mention the studies, somewhere they have to mention the bias and confounding, all these things, and I can't separate this because it goes along with the study. That's why already told you, I have made all the slides to come together. So second and third will be this. So I think this is the third portion subsection and the last portion regarding the epidemiological prevalence. Or surveillance, sorry, not prevalence, surveillance, how we are going to know some disease is appearing or not. So surveillance, it is an ongoing systematic collection, analysis, interpretation of health data, and you do that to do the planning, implementation, and evaluation of public health practice. Closely integrate with the timely dissemination to those who need to know. Actually, this is a definition that you need to learn for surveillance, but you don't have to. I'm not going. But the only thing that you have to take care, like when we see this, it is a ongoing systematic collection. So something we are always watching upon. We are collecting the data, and then we are analyzing it. We are seeing the report, and why we get the report to know how effective one of our control measures is or any national program, and whether it is good or not, whether it is functioning well, to evaluate it. Suppose your Malaysia is having some AIDS control national program, and you are given the job, like whether that AIDS control program conducted by Malaysian government is effective or not. So you need to have a data which you will be collecting, analyzing, and interpreting. And why? To know whether you need to change, or you may be like how to evaluate whether it is working fine, whether you need to do some changing, and if it is for a new disease, what should be the planning, who population should be given more importance to, which age group should be given more importance to, how it should be implemented, for all those things. And also finally to disseminate, because the knowledge whatever you gained, it shouldn't be kept within you. If it is useful to the society, it should be disseminated in a conference hall or something, or in a newspaper, or somewhere where the result will be informed to the uh, population or the concerned stakeholders. So that is actually what we mean by surveillance. So any health data. But then there is another similar word in English which is called as monitoring. Even monitoring, we do the same. We are monitoring, and the same thing is happening in surveillance. But there is one difference between monitoring and surveillance. From this definition, can you, any one of you could say me what is that one difference between surveillance and monitoring? Both are same. When you go for this definition, now the same definition is applicable for monitoring also, but one word it is not applied. Can you say me what is that one word? Should I answer or you people trying? Okay, that one word will be ongoing. In case of surveillance, it is a continuous process. It is a everyday process. You collect the data every day, and then every day, or you are not stopping it. It is a continuous process. Whereas in monitoring, and monitoring is something that is happening in different sectors. It is happening in even the if you we go to Allison's, the banking sector. If we come to Vinod's, the IT sector, monitoring is happening in your case also. But in your case, or in general, monitoring is something that is done in a periodic basis. Like you have a periodic monitoring every 6 months. Only at that time, but you just go collect data, what happened, and then do something. I mean, not only you, everyone. But surveillance, it is an ongoing process. It is a continuous process. There is no break like that in case of monitoring. So that is the simple difference between surveillance and monitoring. One process is discontinuous on a periodic basis, that is monitoring. And surveillance, it is a continuous process. It is an ongoing process. You don't stop it unless you have terminated the disease. So now if we go for the public health surveillance, the surveillance is not done for smallpox, because we have terminated smallpox completely. But all other diseases, even though polio, it is in a eliminating stage, we have not completely stopped its surveillance. It is ongoing. So we don't do it or stop this surveillance unless that disease have completely got terminated. So that is the difference between surveillance and monitoring. And why we do this surveillance? We get the information, the person, the place, the time. We describe it in which people, in which area, during what time. So that gives us the idea how to plan a new program, how to implement it. We get that. And who performs this public health surveillance? Group of people who are called as epidemiologists, the people who have done MPH or masters in epidemiology. who knows about epidemiological methods, this incidence calculation, prevalence calculation, all those attack rates, all the terms that we have, morbidity rates, the standardized method, the people who understand that language, the epidemiologists, medical professionals can do. Of course, they are not analyzing the data, maybe they are not aware, but at least they will collect the data and they give the data to the concerned epidemiologist. Pharmacies can be done. Not that they are doing, but they can do it. They can see every day like which medicines have been sold. So if we are giving some particular direction to the pharmacies, like we want to know with a particular disease, yeah, the earlier one, gastric ulcer. How many medicines are being sold every day for this gastric ulcer? We get to know. So the pharmacists can do the surveillance, and health insurance providers for sure. There's no doubt regarding them. Emergency responders, we get the details from them, and also the public health departments, the local, state, federal, or the central. So all these people can perform the public health surveillance, but the most important one involved in it forever will be a separate section, which is constituted by the public health department of a particular country, and that will be the group of people, epidemiologists. And why do we use public health surveillance? Because we need to know whether there is a disease increasing or decreasing in a population, to understand whether it is going towards epidemic, to understand whether an illness is occurring geographically. We see a particular disease is happening only in a particular population. So whether there is a geographical connection, portray the natural history of the disease, the pre-pathogenesis and the pathogenic phase, how it is developing, to know that. Monitor changes in infectious agents. So, like whether there is a variation that is happening with the influenza virus, whether the symptoms are changing, whether the duration of the disease is increasing, then we understand that some changes is happening within the infectious agents. And also to facilitate emergency planning. Where do we get this surveillance data? We can go to the hospital records, death certificate, birth records, then it will be called as vital records. And vital records, this is the term that is used for all the vital things that happen in our life. And those vital things, which is health related, will be our birth, the death, the marriage, and any particular disease. So that are the vital records. Initially, the vital records included only birth and death and also marriage certificate. But now with the vital records, it includes more than this. Hospital records and other things are also coming over there. But I couldn't differentiate because it varies according to each country. Each country policy, the vital records change. However, three records will be coming under vital records for sure. That is death, birth certificate, and also marriage certificate. Some countries have included even divorce certificate. Yes, it varies with the country to country policy. Then we can do the surveys to get the data from schools, colleges or educational institution, insurance companies, from doctors, from the environmental monitoring systems. Because when we learn about the air pollution and like our one of the question, air pollution and this the connection to the respiratory diseases, we need to know the air pollution level of that particular city during a particular duration. And this thing we can get from only from a association, I mean institution, not association, sorry, institution which will be collecting this data. So according to each country, there will be some institution which will be collecting the air quality level every day, and from them we will get the data. And from so we need to get that data and then do the surveillance, like whether people living in those cities in that particular period, did they have high rise of respiratory disease. For example, if it is respiratory disease and air quality itself, uh, Delhi in India, it is very highly polluted. I mean, the air pollution is such a grave problem in Delhi. It is a always existing problem, but it gets aggravated during the winter season. Winter season because there will be smoke formation. Already there was air pollution, and then there will be smoke formation added to it during the winter season. So in winter season in Delhi, the pollution is high and also the respiratory diseases are high. So in India, there is a institution which records the quality of the air, the different particulate matter uh, on a day, I mean every day in each cities. So if you want to study of Delhi, you need to go and contact those institution and get the data on a particular day or from this month to that month, what was the average air quality level, because you won't get this in any health institution or hospitals. They are not recording this. You need to go there and then collect the data. Likewise, the water. If what the disease you are studying is somehow water related, then the water quality should be determined. Then, if it is a zoonotic disease you are learning, then the animal health data, like rabies you are studying or brucellosis you are studying, tuberculosis, then you need to know, because all of these are zoonotic diseases. You need to know the animal health, for which you have to go to veterinary doctors or their clinic, the farms, the food manufacturing, etc. And I think I will stop over here. We'll continue in the next class. Um, can someone take a screenshot?
Already
Okay, I will
taken.
stop. I will talk and stop the recording. So if you want to on the camera,